Welcome, sleepless spirit. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to guide you gently into the shadows of slumber, where dreams take over and worries fade away. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more bedtime tales, whispered just for you. Let me know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it as you listen tonight? And if there's a story you've been longing to hear, something spooky, something comforting, tell me. I'm always listening. Now, tuck yourself in. Let the darkness wrap around you like a warm blanket. It's time to let go and drift into the story. Appalachia. By the end, you might think twice before driving alone at night, especially through the mountains. But before we begin, please consider subscribing. Don't forget to like the video and share it with your friends and family. I'd also love to hear where you're listening from. Thank you all for your support. It means a lot to me. Now, let's start. Story 1. That morning started like any other. I rolled in just before 5, grabbed a thermos of burnt coffee from the depot, and went to check the load sheets. Normal weight, same old quarry, or so I thought. When I got to dispatch, the usual route was crossed off the map. They're blasting again on Dalton Ridge. The kid behind the desk told me. He couldn't have been older than 22. Acne still fresh, hair barely combed. He pointed at this faint little line snaking off the main road like a broken vein. Carriage Hollow. Access, he said. It's a shortcut. Shaves a good mile off if you're heading to pit 6. I gave him a look. Never heard of it. Old logging road. Been around forever. Should be fine. That should did some heavy lifting. But I didn't argue. The load wasn't unusual, and I wasn't in the mood for a back and forth over route alternatives with someone who probably still lived with his mom. My rig was in good shape. A 12 Peterbilt, reinforced axles, solid brakes, fresh tires. I just filled the tanks and checked the fluids. Chains were packed, flashlight under the seat, first aid behind the passenger side. I figured worst case I'd just crawl it slow. But the second I made that turn onto Carriage Hollow, I knew something was off. It didn't look like any access road I'd ever seen. No gravel layer, no maintenance. It wasn't just rough, it looked abandoned. The first 30 feet were rutted with deep tire scars, most of them frozen over. Trees lined both sides so tightly they brushed my mirrors. Pine branches clawed at the cab. It looked less like a road and more like the forest had started reclaiming it. I slowed way down and double-checked the map. It definitely said 6 Millesi to the top. Mile 1 was uneventful, tight curves, uneven terrain, but manageable. I kept it in low gear and let the truck work through it. Then things started to feel off. Around mile 2, the road's grade got weird. It wasn't just climbing or dipping. It was rolling like driving on frozen waves. My stomach couldn't get ahead of the motion. Every time I thought I'd leveled out, the road would pitch again, like it had a mind of its own. Nothing mechanical, nothing wrong with the truck, just the terrain. Unnatural. By the 3rd mile, my hands were sweating on the wheel. It wasn't just the slope, it was the trees. They weren't just dense, they were repeating. I saw the same birch tree over and over. It was unmistakable. Bark split low, leaning slightly right, propped against a rock with moss shaped like the sole of a boot. I noticed it once, then again 10 minutes later. Then again, the 4th time I passed it, I pulled over and killed the engine. I stepped out with a piece of chalk and marked the trunk. Nothing fancy, just a big orange X. Got back in, drove another half mile forward, and there it was again. Same birch, same moss, no chalk. My gut dropped. I turned off the music I'd had on low and tried the radio. Just static. I adjusted the dial. More static. I picked up my phone. No signal. Not one bar. The display just said SOS like it was taunting me. That's when I started to feel it in my chest. Not panic, not yet, but that creeping sense of something being off kilter. Like when you walk into a room and can't figure out what's missing, but you know something's wrong. Then the fog came in. At first, it just snaked across the ground. A low mist drifting slow like dry ice leaking across a stage. Then it got thicker fast. 1 minute I had visibility. The next I couldn't see past the hood. I dropped to a crawl, 5 meters an hour tops. My knuckles were white from gripping the wheel. I flicked on the floodlights. Didn't help. The fog swallowed it whole. Then the rear view cam feed went black, just gone. No error message, no flicker, like someone yanked the cable. I glanced at the side mirrors. Something moved fast, hugging the edges of the trailer. Could have been a bird, could have been branches, could have been anything. Then I looked over. The passenger seat belt was fastened. I swear on everything, I hadn't touched it. No one had. It was just buckled neatly, pulled snug against the empty seat. I stared at it for maybe 30 seconds, waiting for it to move. Nothing did, but mine was still unbuckled. I hadn't clipped it in since getting out earlier, and I hadn't heard the buckle click either. I brake hard. The truck stopped with a groan. Engine idling low. No wind, no movement, just the faint smell of warm rubber and the quiet hum from under the hood. Then I heard it dot tap tap tap. Then a rapid series across the roof. Light and sharp like something with claws or metal tools. I cut the engine. Silence dropped like a hammer. I grabbed the crowbar, opened the door, and stepped out. Fog clung to everything. It didn't move, didn't shift. It just sat thick and dead still. I circled the truck, flashlight raised. Nothing. No animals, no wind, not even branches near the roof, but something near the back caught my eye. The gravel was moving, not sliding, not settling, rising. Like something underneath was pushing upward in slow, steady breaths. I leaned closer, my hands shaking. The light caught it, dead center in the bed. The gravel pulsed once, twice. That's all I needed. I backed away fast, climbed in, locked the doors, and hit the ignition. The road ahead yawned. Just a drop off into white. Nothing. I tried reversing. The way behind it vanished, too. I cranked the wheel, tried again. Trees right up against the trailer, where road had been 5 minutes before. Then the radio crackled, but it wasn't dispatch. It was me. Fog rolled in fast. Something under the load. Feels like it's watching. My voice recorded, not from earlier, like it had already happened. Then another snippet past the same tree 4 times. Rear view dead. Passenger seat belt buckled itself. I tore the mic from the dash. It went silent. Then the cab light blinked once, twice. Then nothing. I couldn't take it anymore. I floored the gas straight ahead. Didn't care if it was road, dirt, or drop. I just needed to move. At some point, I must have broken through. The fog thinned. I saw gravel, a mound, machinery, the upper pit. I pulled in hard, brakes screaming. A loader guy came out of the shack waving. I didn't wait. I was already out the door and circling back to the bed. Gravel looked normal, mostly except one spot. Enter of the load. A perfect ring of displaced stone, clean, deliberate, and inside it on the bare steel, a rust-cold handprint, small 5 fingers, palm facing up. The next day, I went back to dispatch, asked about Carriage Hollow. The guy on shift, a different one this time older, just blinked at me. That road washed out in '88. Mudslide buried the whole trail. No one's used it in decades. I'm 39 years old, and I've been running loads across the Smoky Ridge corridor long enough that I don't need a GPS anymore. Every curve, every weird bend where the road seems to lean the wrong way. I know it all by feel. There's this one stretch they don't talk about much, though, Palmer's Climb. That's not even the real name. It's just what the old-timers call it when they do mention it, which they mostly don't. Officially, it's part of Route 64, eastbound, maybe 15 miles SH of the Tennessee-North Carolina line, but no one ever says that out loud. You hear it in how they skip over that segment. You'll be talking routes at the terminal, and they'll just breeze past it like it's not worth mentioning. Dispatch will assign it with their eyes on the monitor, never meeting yours. Guys who've been in the game long enough just trade routes when that stretch shows up on the docket. Nobody jokes about it. Story to nobody offers tips. It's not that kind of thing. You just learn over time that there's a reason folks avoid Palmer's Climb. Now, I'd run that stretch a handful of times before. Always daytime. Always with someone else somewhere on the map, 10 minutes behind, 5 ahead, someone on the radio checking in. That changes everything. You don't notice the quiet as much when there's chatter on the CB or a tail light blinking in the distance. This time though, solo run, midnight freight, light trailer. I'd picked up sealed chemical drums, some kind of paint base or coating agent from this processing plant in Castle Hill. Delivery was scheduled for sunrise at the Ridgemont South Depot. Nothing unusual about the load. Drum seals were good. Weight distributed fine. Trailer was maybe a third of what I usually haul. It barely tugged on the hitch. No weather alerts. No road closures. Smooth ride until I hit that fog. It came in out of nowhere. I just passed through Myrtle's Notch when the first tendrils started curling past the mirrors. And by the time I reached the start of Palmer's Climb, it was soup. It was soup. Thick as drywall paste. High beams just bounced it back in my face. The kind of fog that makes you feel like your own headlights are lying to you. I rolled the windows down, even though the air bit like ice. Better to be freezing than nodding off. Somewhere near the fourth big curve, I spotted headlights coming down the slope. Dim amber ones. Not that bright white sting most rigs have now. This was old school H halogen. I dipped my lights, so did he. It was an old river cab over, late 7 South, or maybe very early 80s, the kind that doesn't even turn heads anymore except for guys who've driven too long to be impressed by chrome. It had that square face, stacked grille, and mirrors tall as scaffolding. Rust walls working its way out of the seams, like the thing was held together more by habit than metal. As he passed, I got a glimpse of the driver's silhouette, head tilted, down, shoulders hunched, looked like he was riding the edge of exhaustion. I figured maybe he was hauling asphalt or gravel and just keeping it slow on the descent. I didn't think anything of it. 10 minutes later though, I came around a long looping right-hander and saw the same lights again, same glow, same crawl. But now they were in front of me, heading up the mountain. I let off the gas, puzzled. There was no way that guy had looped back around. There aren't any exits, turnarounds, or loops along that part of 64, just rock, trees, and the edge of the world. I checked my mirrors, scanned the shoulder. Nothing, no pull-off, no hidden cut-through, just the same road winding like a thread, through black fabric. I slowed down until I was tailing him from a safe distance. 100 feet, maybe a little more, tried to get a better look. He crested a ridge and vanished around the next curve. A few minutes later, he passed me again, this time, coming downhill. Same truck, same speed, same weird silence. And this time I noticed the cab rocked a bit, like something heavy inside had come loose and was shifting against the walls. The thing drifted by without urgency, like gravity had it on a leash. That's when my hands decided they'd had enough. I pulled into the only turnout I knew about, a gravel pocket halfway up the climb, barely big enough to park a cab, without the tail sticking into the lane. I parked, killed the lights, but kept the engine idling low. No signal on the phone, no voices on the radio, just the sound of my own truck settling into stillness and wind dragging through the trees like it was hunting for something. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out. I don't even know what I expected to see. Maybe a turnout I'd missed. A second road winding parallel that had somehow gotten left off every map I'd ever studied. Something normal. I climbed the slope beside the road, maybe 30 feet up, hands gripping whatever branches or rock I could find, shoe slipping on the gravel, knees barking at me the whole way. When I finally got high enough to look down, I froze because I didn't hear tires behind me. Didn't hear them. Ahead of me either. They were above me. I turned slowly, raising the flashlight just as the beam caught the front grille of that Rever, rolling sideways across the slope. Not downhill, not climbing, just moving across it at an angle that made no sense. Tires biting into bare rock like it was asphalt. No engine noise, no diesel groan, just rubber sliding over stone with a dry, whispery scrape. The headlights were dull and flickering, more like candles than beams. And that's when I saw his face, or the shape of it at least, tilted wrong, mouth open like he was screaming. But no sound came out, head hanging off to the side at an angle that didn't make sense for a guy sitting upright. His hands locked onto the wheel like they'd been bolted there. He didn't steer, didn't blink. The truck just coasted forward across the ridge, dipped down, over the edge, and disappeared. I backed down the slope a lot faster than I came up, have slid the whole way and smacked my elbow on the side mirror. Diving into the cab, locked the doors, sat there, didn't breathe much, didn't move for 10 minutes. When I finally started the engine again, I kept the brights off and the pedals, steady, didn't stop, didn't even blink too long until I rolled into Ridgemont at just after 5:30. The guy at the dock, skinny kid, maybe 20, asked if he ran into anything rough, said I looked wiped. I told him I just hadn't slept much. He laughed and said I should switch to night hauls full time. I didn't laugh back. That might have been it. Just another weird night I never talked about, but a couple weeks later I was at the terminal flipping through logbooks while they rotated my tires. Old guy I knew stand me, Herbie Stanlow, something like that, leaned over and tapped my route sheet. Palmer's Climb, he said. I nodded. You see the river. I didn't say anything. He just gave this slow nod like he already knew the answer. You saw him. Then he told me Thestry said in 1974 there was a solo driver Rever cab overhauling fresh tar. Brakes failed on the final descent. Took the curve too fast and flipped the whole thing off the ridge. Took 3 days to drag the drums back up. Never found the driver. Not a body. Not even his boots. The cab was jammed between two pine trunks like it had been dropped there by a claw crane. Engine still warm when they found it. People say he never left the route. Say he only shows up for drivers who are alone running light. Drivers who can be followed. Story 3. It was supposed to be a straight haul. Just a deadhead from Denver up to Barlow to grab a load of dry stock. One of those overnight routes I've done so many times I could probably drive it with my eyes closed, though I obviously don't. That stretch through the eastern hollows. It's a whole other world. Just a lane blacktop twisting through hills and trees, no gas stations, no towns, no lights. Half the time the road signs are so faded, they're more suggestion than instruction. If your GPS goes out, and it always does out there, you better know where you are by feel. I remember leaving late, around 10 give or take. Everything was quiet. Not just outside, but the kind of quiet that presses into the cab with you. I kept the CB on. Not that anyone was talking, just forth his static hum, so I didn't feel like I was driving through a vacuum. I was about 20 minutes past Emter, where the road starts tunneling between trees so close together they blot out the sky. That's when I saw him just standing there on the shoulder. Hitchhiker looked like a college kid, maybe 19-20 at most. Tall, slouched like he was carrying every mile he'd walked in that saggy black backpack. Grey hoodie with a hood up. Couldn't see his face, but he wasn't moving much. No wave, no smile, just his thumb out like he was expecting me. Now, normally I don't stop, not out here. Too many risks. But there's this unspoken thing among people who run these roads, especially at night. If you see someone that far into nowhere, you don't just leave them, not unless something really feels off. And he didn't look off, just tired, cold maybe. I eased down, let the brakes hiss, and rolled to a stop with my passenger door lined up beside him. You stranded. I asked, leaning over to pop the latch. He gave me one nod, said, "Trying to get to Barlow." Voice was soft, no accent, just clean and plain. He climbed up into the cab like he'd done it before, buckled his seatbelt automatically, and didn't say another word. We rolled out. He stayed. Quiet, eyes forward, hands tucked into his sleeves. I glanced at him now and then, trying to get a better read, but his face never caught the light right. It was like the shadows under his hood were stuck there. We drove like that for about 20 meters. Long, quiet stretch of nothing but road, pine trees, and the faint hum of the tires. Then I looked over again. The seat was empty, just gone, door still, shut, no sound, no weight shift, no movement at all. I slammed the brakes so hard I felt the whole load got out with a flashlight and walked every inch of the trailer, thinking maybe he slipped out without me hearing. Checked the ditch, checked the woods, even looked under the rig. Nothing. Nothing. When I opened the passenger door again, the seat belt was still clipped, just hanging there, curled over the empty seat like someone invisible was still sitting in it. I sat in that cab until daylight, just locked in place. Couldn't drive, couldn't think. Eventually, I pulled into a truck stop outside Wilmot, ordered a coffee so strong it could peel paint and let it go cold, while I stared at the parked rigs and wondered if anyone else out there had ever picked up a kid who vanished without a trace. He didn't tell anyone. Next night, dispatch rerouted me. Said the Barlow load had been cancelled, and I needed to go south for a pickup in Tyler instead. New schedule, new route. I figured maybe I get my head back on straight. I kept it slow on these switchbacks through Ridge Run. Mountain roads always made me a little twitchy. Anyway, then around 2:00 a.m., just west of Henley Gap, I spotted someone walking the shoulder on the opposite side. Same hoodie, same backpack, same dragging gait. This time he didn't stick his thumb out, just turned his head and stared as I passed. Didn't break stride, didn't wave. I didn't stop, didn't sleep either. Ended up parking in a church lot down in Bristol, locked every door and sat there till sunup. Didn't even close my eyes. Third night, I tried to convince myself it was all coincidence. Maybe I was overtired. Maybe it was just a kid with similar clothes. I told myself whatever I needed to believe. Then I got a job out of Elridge, back northeast, back toward Fairvale. I figured if I just stuck to the route and kept moving, it'd be fine. He was waiting in the road, dead center in my lane, standing still, hands at his sides. I didn't swerve. I didn't stop. I just flipped on the brights. That's when I saw his face. The jaw looked like it had caved in, just sagging inward like something hit it hard, and it never healed right. His mouth moved slow, opening and closing like he was trying to say something, but no sound came out. I didn't let up, didn't blink. I kept the wheel steady and rolled right through. There was no bump, no thud, nothing in the rear view, just empty road again. I parked at a diner in Pine Hollow and didn't leave for 2 days. Told dispatch I had food poisoning and locked myself in the cab. Barely sleeping, always listening. Then the alert came through the tablet. Baylor report abandoned on KY40 near Eldon. If you're in the area, retrieve and tow. My hands went numb. Reading it, KY40 ran right through the stretch where I first saw him, but I needed the hours. Bills don't care about ghosts. So I went. The trailer was there just like they said. Rusted out reefer unit. No plate. One of the rear doors was hanging open. Inside it was worse than I expected. The walls had bolt mounts, like someone had installed chains at some point. In the back corner, a mattress sat twisted, stained, the shape of it sunken and uneven. Cooler nearby. Cracked open old towels inside. Black streaked like they'd been used and never washed. Nothing with a name, no ID, no manifest. But in the back corner, half buried under a pile of crumpled insulation, I saw it. License plate. Same. State. Same county. Same number as mine. I ran back to my truck, did a full walk around. My plate was missing, gone. I locked the cab, climbed inside, grabbed the crowbar I kept behind a seat, and sat with it across my legs until morning. Then the truck rocked once, then again, like something had shifted inside or climbed in. I checked the mirrors, all of them. Passenger door was wide open. Oh, seat belt hanging down, still clipped. I started the engine and left that trailer right where it was, didn't stop, didn't look back. Hauled north till I hit the depot in Barlow and dropped the trailer without even checking the yard manager's face. Got on a Greyhound back to Denver that night. Sold the rig. I was done. I'm 47 years old. The job is one of the easy ones, just two rusted pallets stacked with old farm gear, hay rakes, and horse plows. Mostly stuff from before I was even born. The pickup was in Knoxville, and the drop-off was at some scrapyard, tucked behind a ridge east of Miston Ridge. The only thing that gave me pause was the paperwork, or really the lack of it. The guy at dispatch handed me a manila folder bent in, the corners like it had been sitting around for too long with barely anything inside. A single delivery slip, and at the bottom, scribbled in blue ink like an afterthought, was a name, Graham, no company name, no street address, just end of Jerro's spur, and a local Kentucky number. I asked about the address. Dispatch just shrugged, and said the guy would meet me there. I should have walked then, but the job paid cash and it paid up front. I've done enough rural drop-offs to know how things go when you're hauling scrap. Nobody wants a paper trail. Figured it was just another shady operation trying to stay off the books. So I headed out. My route cut east along 33 and then north, past Stone Creek Gorge, winding through old coal territory where half the gas stations are boarded up and you can go 20 meters story 4 without passing another vehicle. I've driven through that stretch dozens of times. Nothing unusual about it. Just trees, empty fields, and the occasional dead town where the windows are all busted, but the street lamps still flicker on at night like they don't know the place died. I don't play music when I drive. Never have. I like to hear the engine, feel the tires. There's a rhythm to long hauls that keeps me focused. White lines, engine rumble, the hum of the wheels on different pavement. Sometimes I'll crack the window, just an inch or two, to let the air sting my face and keep me alert. That night, I was maybe 20 minutes past Luring when the GPS started glitching. First, it lagged behind by a few seconds, then froze altogether. I tapped the screen, unplugged and replugged the charger. Nothing. Screen went dark, then flashed back on, but with no data, just that eerie blue glow. No signal, no map, not even a compass needle, the kind of blank that doesn't make sense when you've still got power. At first, I figured it was a cell tower dead zone. Happens sometimes in the hills, but then I realized something else. The mile markers had stopped showing up. There were no signs, no billboards, not even those little reflective markers on the side of the road. Just darkness stretching ahead, framed by trees, and the sense that the road was no longer part of anything official, like I'd slipped onto some forgotten spur of highway that hadn't existed until just now. I eased off the gas, not braking, just letting the truck coast a little. That's when I saw it. It stepped out onto the shoulder, maybe 40 yards. Ahead. Not into the road, just right up to the edge. At first, I thought it was a man, maybe some drifter or hunter. Tall, thin, arms hanging low like he was tired. But the longer I looked, the more I realized nothing about the posture was right. The limbs were too long, and they bent strangely, at the joints, like someone had built a person from memory and got the proportions wrong. There was no flashlight, no headlamp, just the thing standing there, angled slightly toward the truck like it was waiting for something. I didn't stop, didn't swerve, just gripped the wheel tighter and drove past, eyes fixed dead ahead, watched it shrink in my mirror until it faded into the dark. I didn't breathe until it was gone. Half a mile later, there was another one, the same shape, Same slack, twisted arms, only this one was closer to the edge of the pavement. Its head was tilted slightly like it was listening to the truck, like it knew I was coming. That time I said it out loud, quiet, just one word. Now, eventually the gravel road showed up, Jarrow Spur. It wasn't marked, but there was no mistaking it. Just a rough cut between two drainage ditches with tyre ruts already grooved into the mud. I turned in slowly. The gravel looked disturbed, like something big had been dragged through it not long ago. Long uneven scrapes in the dirt that didn't look like tyre marks. I kept glancing in my mirrors. Still nothing, but that didn't last long. Maybe a 4 mile in, I caught motion out of the corner of my eye. Not on the road, off to the right, running parallel through the trees. Too fast to be a person, too upright, to be a deer. The thing was moving between trunks like it didn't need to think about the gaps, like it had mapped them out in advance. It didn't slow, didn't stumble, just moved. I pressed the pedal harder. The trailer fishtailed slightly. I corrected and kept moving. I was watching 4 lights, a fence, a shack, anything that looked like it could be Graham's SCRAPYARD. Instead, I got a tree across the road, a big one, full pine, still fresh, laid clean across the path, not broken, not fallen, placed. I saw the drag marks in the dirt, curving around like someone had rolled it into position by hand. I brake hard, stared at it, then at the woods on both sides. Nothing. I got out, took the tow strap, looped it around the trunk, and winched it off the road. It rolled easier than I expected. The bark was still sticky with sap, not a speck of rot. I was walking back to the cab when I heard it slam, driver's side door, loud and sharp. I hadn't touched it. The engine was still running. Keys were in the ignition, but the cab was locked. I stood there just staring at it, hands by my sides, heart kicking at my ribs. Checked my pockets. Fob was still clipped to my jeans. No way. It had misfired. That door had been closed and locked from inside. Passenger side was still cracked. I climbed in that way and immediately knew something was wrong. The air inside the cab didn't feel like mine anymore. It wasn't musty. It wasn't smoky. It just felt used, like someone had been sitting there breathing deep and slow for a long time. The mirror had shifted too, just slightly, tilted up the way it does when someone leans against it with a hand. I didn't touch it. I put it in drive and rolled forward. About 2 miles later, I passed a rock face. Someone had spray painted it in huge red dripping letters. Not welcome here. Next to it stood a man barefoot, shirtless, skin the color of old ash, dry and flaking like he hadn't seen water in days. He didn't wave, didn't speak. He just pointed up the road. I didn't stop, didn't even slow down. I kept driving until the road just ended. No warning. 1 second I was on gravel. The next I was staring at a sharp cliff edge where the path had been carved off clean. No signs, no barriers, just a straight drop into tree canopy below. I slammed the brakes, dust spilled, over the edge and vanished into nothing. And then I checked the mirrors. They were back, dozens of them, maybe more. Same figures, same crooked limbs lined up in a wide crescent behind the trailer. Not moving, not even swaying in the wind. No eyes, no faces, just skin stretched over. Bodies, shaped almost like people. I didn't get out. Didn't check the load. Didn't call anyone. I reversed the entire way out. Mirrors locked on them the whole time. I didn't turn until I found the fork, and then I floored it. Fishtailing once around the bend, sparks clipping off the fender. I parked just outside a diner near Boris Hill. Engine still humming. Didn't shut it off. Didn't uncouple the trailer. Just sat there until the sun came up. I told dispatch I wasn't hauling east again. He just nodded and moved on to the next job. I just finished a drop-off south of Kingsley. Nothing unusual, and dispatch let me know I had about 6 hours before I needed to be on the road again, heading west toward Lindale. 6 hours is that weird middle ground. Too little time to get a room and crash, but way too much to just sit around stiff in the cab, staring at your dash and counting the fan clicks. So I started looking for somewhere to park, somewhere out of the way. There's a pull-off on Route 19, a couple miles past mile marker 147. Probably wouldn't even notice it if you weren't paying attention. Just gravel, barely a bend with a tired-looking guardrail rusting down the slope and the line of tire ruts leading to nowhere. There's an overlook there technically, but all you see now is a wall of trees and brush. Used to be a view probably years ago. Now it's just forgotten space. Perfect. I eased the truck into the spot, turned the engine off, and stepped out. The air was weird, thick still, kind of like when a storm's thinking about starting, but can't quite commit. No birds, no bugs, just dead quiet. That whole stretch of road cuts through the hills like it doesn't really belong, winding tight turns, barely wider now in places, and nothing but old pine and stone in both directions. No stations, no lights, no signs of people 4 miles. I'd parked there once before, months ago. I remembered there was a narrow trail behind the guardrail, practically swallowed by brush unless you knew to look for it. It leads down a steep incline to a dry riverbed, a shallow cut of earth, maybe 5-6 feet deep, strewn with flat stones, some downed branches, and a whole lot of nothing. Just quiet. Thought it'd be a story 5 decent place to sit, stretch out a bit, maybe jot down some notes or take a quick nap. I grabbed my sandwich, a bottle of water, my little notebook, and headed down. I don't know how long I was sitting there before I heard it, maybe 15 minutes. I'd scribbled down a couple lines in the margins of an old delivery form. Something about a weird interaction I'd had in town earlier. Was halfway through my sandwich when I caught the sound, an engine off rhythm. Rough, like it was being held together with rust and duct tape. Too loud for a place like that. You know how some engines announce themselves before they arrive. That kind. Something under the hood was rattling like a tin can tied to a bumper. Just constant metallic clanking beneath a long groan of revs. I pressed my back to a tree and stayed low, curious more than worried at that point. Not a lot of vehicles come down that road, unless they're lost or avoiding something. When the car rounded the bend, I saw it big, like too big, long and wide, more like a hearse than anything else, though I couldn't tell the make. Might have been some kind of old station wagon. Looked like it used to be white or cream-colored, but now it was stained with streaks of rust, dried mud, and something darker. I couldn't place. It had that look like someone had tried to clean it once, then gave up. Windows were half down. 2 men inside. Both wore ball caps. Couldn't see their faces well from where I was, but the passenger stuck his head out when they passed my rig and yelled something. I couldn't make it out. Just this harsh string of words thrown into the air, like he expected someone to answer. They didn't stop right away. Rolled on about 100 feet. Then slowed to a crawl. Real slow. Engine still running, but the car just hovered in place. They didn't shut it off. Didn't roll on either. The passenger leaned out again and smacked the roof with his palm. A loud thunk, more like a signal than a stretch. Then finally, the car eased forward and disappeared around a curve. That kind of thing isn't rare out here. You get loners, drunk locals, sometimes people just curious when they see a parked rig in the woods. Truckers get messed with now and then. It's usually nothing, weirdos, bored kids. But 3 minutes later, I heard the engine again. It was closer. They turned around. That's when I dropped my sandwich and ducked behind the biggest log I could find. Rotting, half split down the middle, but still solid enough to cover most of me. I pressed into the dirt, heart racing now. The car rolled back into the pull-off, slow crunch of tires over gravel. I couldn't see much from where I was, but I heard the car door crack open, then slam shut. One of them spit. Wet touch sound that hit too close. Then I heard a voice, low, relaxed, southern drawl. Like a guy talking about the weather, Left it unlocked. Maybe another voice. Different tone. Amused. Plenty of time. Boots scuffed over gravel. I could hear them walking around the rig, circling it. One of them tugged on a door. Then the other said something about a lot of room back here, like he was inspecting it. I didn't move. I just slid further into the brush, deeper into the dry creek bed. Every step I took snapped twigs or rustled weeds louder than I wanted, but I had to move. If they spotted me, it was over. There's nowhere to run up that slope, not fast enough. And I had nothing on me. No phone, no knife, not even a flashlight. My phone was back in the cab charging. I'd plugged it in when I parked. Figured I'd have it topped off by the time I left. My radio was dead. Battery had given out a few days earlier, and I hadn't gotten around to replacing it. And the kicker, I hadn't logged the stop. No one knew I was there, so I just kept moving, inching along the stones until I found this dip, kind of a bowl in the rock where water might have collected back when the river ran. It was narrow and deep, and it put me below eye level from the trail. That's where I stayed. I don't know how long I was down there before I lost track of time completely. Every few minutes, I'd hear something, a car door opening, then shutting. Again, a cough, a grunt, the crunch of gravel as they circled back around. Then nothing. 15 minutes of silence. Then the engine again, maybe only 100 feet off. Then silence. Then voices. It just kept repeating, and I didn't move. Didn't eat. Barely drank. Just lit cigarette after cigarette. Hands trembling so hard I kept missing the lighter. Smoke curled into my eyes made them sting, but I didn't care. I figured if they came down after me, I'd hear them on the rocks, maybe get a head start, maybe. At one point, I think I fell asleep for a minute, just long enough to jolt awake, thinking I'd heard something behind me. Then came the new sound up the ridge, faint but steady. Might have been a chainsaw or a riding mower. Could have been someone clearing brush on their property. It didn't matter. My body tensed like it might run for it. I could picture myself scrambling up the hill, waving my arms, shouting, but I didn't go. I stayed in that basin because after that car, I didn't trust anyone. Eventually, everything went quiet again. When I finally climbed out, the sun had dropped behind the trees. Light was starting to fade and my legs were stiff as hell. I stayed hidden as I worked my way back toward the truck, stuck to the tree iron, circled around. When I reached the rig, everything looked the same. Cab was closed, no broken windows, no footprints I could see. The glove box was hanging open, but maybe I'd left it like that. I wasn't thinking clearly at that point, but on the back of the trailer, just above the latch, someone had wiped a long curved lines through the dust, like they dragged their fingers across it just once, slow and casual. Not writing, not even a shape, just a mark, a starting point. That was it for me. As I got in, turned the key, and drove out fast. Didn't check the lot, didn't look back. I didn't stop anywhere that didn't have lights and cameras and people in uniforms. That's how I got away. It was just past 11. I'd finished a drop in Rutherford and picked up a return load from a cable plant out in Belknap. Pretty straightforward. Bundled spools of industrial wire, neatly tarped and chained, not too heavy, but enough to keep the RIG grounded on the curbs. I'd done the loop a dozen times. Instead of swinging wide through the interstate and hitting all the way stations, I took Route 612, quieter road, fewer eyes, saves maybe 30 minutes if traffic's light. 2 lanes, shoulder barely wide enough for a tire, and thick woods pressed up on both sides like the trees are listening. Cell signals a coin flip, especially after dark, but I'd run it plenty. I knew the quirks. I wasn't expecting anything I couldn't handle. About 15 miles in, I got this strange twinge. Not mechanical. My gauges were fine, nothing off in the engine tone, but I started feeling this static come under my skin. like the atmosphere before a lightning strike. My hands felt too tight on the wheel, like I'd been bracing without realizing it. So, I pulled off near Walker's Notch, a turnout I knew had just enough room to sidestep the lane without getting clipped. Didn't need to stop, but I told myself I should check the straps anyway. Sometimes you do things just to make yourself feel in control. Grabbed my flashlight, hopped out, and walked the length of the trailer. Kicked every tire, gave the chains a tug. Everything was snug. But that feeling didn't go away. Like the pressure in the air wasn't coming from above. It was coming from the trees. And that's when I saw him. He was just across the road, maybe 30 feet back, standing right at the edge story 6 of the brush. No sound, no headlights, no footsteps. I didn't see him walk up. He was just there. Mid-40ish maybe, lanky frame, wiry arms, pasture like he'd spent most of his life under a truck. He wore a pair of worn-down coveralls, dull grey with a patch I couldn't quite read, boots scuffed up at the toes. Ball cap pulled low enough, but I couldn't see his eyes clearly, even with my high beams lighting him up. His skin looked pale, pale enough that the shadows didn't seem to touch it. "You all right?" I called across the cab, not stepping out from behind the hood. He raised one hand, not fast, not waving, just lifted it slow and steady like he was answering a question I hadn't asked yet. Then he crossed the road smooth and quiet and placed his palm flat against the side of my trailer. He dragged it along the length of the metal reel, deliberate, like he was feeling for something under the surface. "You broken down?" I asked again. "I need to go south," he said. His voice didn't carry like it should have. Dry and flat, like he hadn't spoken in a while. "You headed south eventually," I said. "Where are you trying to get to?" He didn't answer, just stared at the door like he was waiting for it to open. Now, I don't make a habit of picking up hitches to many stories, but sometimes your gut tells you something different. This time, my gut was split right down the middle. There wasn't fear exactly. It felt more like a question that didn't have the right words. Like when you hear a tune you swear you know but can't place. He climbed in without waiting for a yes, just opened the door, eased into the seat, and sat bolt upright with his knees together, hands resting on them like a school kid on a field trip, eyes locked on the road. So I drove, for a long while. Neither of us said a thing. Then just past a little bridge I remembered near Elmer's Pass, he spoke. "Don't stop in Meldon Hollow." "Not tonight." I glanced over. "Never heard of it." "You will," he said. "Keep going." We took a bend, and there it was, a hand-painted sign nailed to a leaning fence post, half swallowed by ivy, and Rock Meldon Hollow, with an arrow pointing down a gravel road that looked more like a dried-up creek. No mailbox, no lights, just trees, leaning in like they didn't want anyone watching what came next. The man beside me straightened in his seat, not tensed, more like bracing. "They look like people," he said, "but they're not." Right then, the CB flared to life. I hadn't touched it since Rutherfield. But a voice cut through clear and slow, sweet like it knew your name. "Breaker, breaker, you missed your turn, sugar." I blinked at the radio. Channel light was on, but I hadn't touched the dial. I hadn't even keyed the mic. She came back again, a little more coaxing this time. "Meldon Hollow's real close, darling. You just passed it." "Come on back, Dov." The man beside me didn't move a muscle. "Don't talk," he said, quiet and firm. I reached over and switched the CB off. It went silent, but not the kind of silence you get on empty roads. It felt like the truck was full of something that didn't belong. "I used to run this road," he said eventually, "before they put that sign up." I looked at him. They don't write down towns like Meldon Hollow, but they find you if you're not careful. The next few miles were slow. No cell service, no passing cars. Trees looked taller. The lines on the road started to fade. Then the CB powered itself back on. This time it was a different voice, rougher, low and wet, like someone gargling gravel. "He brought one. Thought we wouldn't see. We see you. Blue rig. We know what you're carrying. I didn't respond, didn't blink, just kept my foot steady and the wheel straight. Then I felt a jolt rear axle like something had landed on the back, and then came a slow scraping noise along the roof, metal on metal, like nails dragging over the trailer from end to end. I pushed it to 70, then 75. The load held steady, but the weight shifted again. Not like cargo sliding, more like something climbing. They're on us, the man said. He pulled a small leather pouch from inside his coat. Deer hide, maybe tied with something fibrous, sinew or twine. When they show themselves, toss this out the window. Don't open it. Don't speak. What is it? Doesn't matter. Just throw it. I didn't ask again. In the mirror, I caught a blur. Nothing clear, just something too tall. Squatting on the back edge, I was waiting for an invitation. The CB lit up once more. This time, it was a whole choir. Dozens of voices, soft and sickly sweet, all overlap. He's back. He left us. Took something. Brought someone. I rolled down the window and threw the pouch into the dark. Everything stopped like someone hit a master switch. The radio cut out. The pressure lifted. Even the trees looked farther back. The man beside me let out a breath like he hadn't taken 1 in 10 minutes. It worked. We didn't say anything else until we rolled into Clare. First gas station I'd seen in an hour. Fluorescent lights buzzing. Door propped open. Still running. I filed a basic report. Said I'd had CB interference. Didn't mention Melvin Hollow. Didn't try to find that gravel road again. I was 22. Mostly long hauls through the Appalachians. I've run those mountains in every season. Every kind of weather, in rigs that rattled and rigs that purred. After a while, you stop noticing the curves and just feel them in your spine. These days, I stick to specialized loads, custom parts, big ticket equipment, moving between Virginia and Kentucky. Sometimes I cross into West Virginia if the load's right and the dispatcher doesn't sound like they're blowing smoke. Most of it's forgettable gas station burritos, radio attic mile markers that feel like you've seen them in a dream before. Nights bleed into mornings. I've woken up more times in sleeper cabs than in a real bed the past 2 decades. But there's one stretch of road just past Jenkins, tucked along a winding cliffside, that's different. It's this narrow turnout on a bend gravel lot, maybe 60 feet long. No lights, no signage, just trees pressed up close and the sound of your tires on loose rock. And I slow down every single time I pass it. It doesn't matter what I'm hauling or how behind schedule I am. I ease up, open the window a crack, and glance at the trees. I don't expect to see anything, but I always check. Back when I used to team drive, I ran with a guy named Randy. We split the hours, took turns on night runs, and didn't talk more than necessary. That's the kind of partner you want when you're running 12-hour shifts with nothing but engine hum and caffeine to keep you upright. Randy wore harp, detail-oriented. The kind of guy who'd notice a half PSI drop in tire pressure before the light even blinked. No vices, no drama. Everything logged, cleaned, and squared away. Then Tammy climbed into the truck. He didn't mention it beforehand, just rolled up one morning at the depot with her sitting shotgun, sipping coffee from one of those floral mugs you only see in someone's grandma's kitchen. She didn't say much, just nodded at me and kept scrolling. On her phone, Randy said she was tagging along for the Cincinnati job, maybe longer. I figured, okay. Not the first time someone brought a +1 on a route. Usually ends by the next way station, but she stuck around, and the longer she did, the more Randy started changing. The first few days were loud, not her talking, just her story 7 presence. Tammy gave off this restless energy. She couldn't sit still for more than 5 minutes, always adjusting something, shifting in her seat, bouncing her leg like her skin didn't quite fit right. And Randy, who used to be uncheckable, started snapping. Little things at first, missing exits, cussing at the GPS, getting weird about who ate what from the snack bin. Then it escalated. They bickered constantly. Dumb stuff like whether we should pull over for the night or keep going. She'd needle him and he'd snap. It got dark quick. More silence than sharp whispers. Mean stuff said to quiet to make out, but loud enough to make the hair on your neck stand up. I kept my head down and focused on driving. Not my business, I told myself. One night, we were parked outside a rest stop near Inns. I saw Tammy climb out, walk around to the back and throw something hard into the woods. Heard it hit branches. Then nothing. Later, Randy stomped around saying someone stole his wrench. I knew better, but I didn't say a word. You don't poke sleeping bears, especially not when you're sharing a cab with one. By the time spring rolled around, I started sleeping outside the truck when I could. Used a foam mat and rolled up near the trailer tires if the weather wasn't freezing. It wasn't just the arguing. It was the way Randy looked like he was always, about 10 seconds from boiling over. One morning, I found a screwdriver jabbed into the dashboard. Clean puncture. No one said anything about it. Then came that Asheville to Hazard Hall, to massive generators heavy as hell over back roads, barely wide enough for one rig, let alone a convoy. We planned it tight, leave early, push through the mountains, and rest just past Jenkins before the last stretch. That gravel pull-off was our stop. I'd used it before, quiet, tucked away, good for a few hours sleep, without having to listen to other truckers bragging over CB. We rolled in around 10:30 p.m. I cut the engine, and we let the silence settle. Randy and Tammy stayed up front whispering. I didn't need to hear the words to know it was bad. You can feel when a fight's about to crack open. Still, I climbed into the top bunk and tried to shut my brain off. I don't know how long I was out. The truck jolted hard, like something slammed into it. My eyes snapped open. Everything was still. No wind. No engine hum. Just silence that felt too thick. I leaned over the bunk edge. The bottom bed was empty. I slid out, opened the door, and dropped to the gravel. The air was cold enough to bite. No wind. But there was that damp weight you get in the mountains after sunset. I walked the length of the trailer, slow listening. That's when I saw them. They were at the back, just on the edge of the floodlight. Tammy had her back to the trailer. Randy was standing close. Too close. His hand was clenched, and there was something smeared across his knuckles. Looked dark, wet. I called out, trying to keep my voice level. Hey, everything okay? He didn't flinch, just stared at her, breathing heavy. Then, without even glancing at me, he muttered, "It's fine." Go back, Tobed. But it wasn't his voice. Not really. Something was off in the way he said it. Like someone doing a bad impression of calm. Tammy didn't say a word. She slipped around the trailer and disappeared from view. Randy stood there for a second longer, then turned and walked into the woods. I found her 5 minutes later, crouched behind the generator crates. She was shaking. Her sleeves had slit up, and I could see bruises deep in rings, like someone had tied something tight and yanked. Rope marks, fresh. I asked if she wanted to call someone. Asked if she was hurt. She didn't respond, just stared through me like I wasn't there. I headed for the cab. Right side door was wide open. That was wrong. We always locked everything. I climbed in and saw the toolkit, empty. The wrench rack, too, cleaned out. He never left it like that, ever. I turned to climb back down and froze. Crunch, gravel. Behind me, I turned. Bandandy was there. He looked calm, like he'd just come back from getting a soda. In one hand, he held a gas station bag, the flimsy brown kind you get when you buy 2 beers, and a bag of jerky. Only this one sagged, at the bottom. It was dripping. "What's in the bag?" I asked. He smiled, didn't answer. Randy. Still nothing. He didn't look at me. He looked past me toward the trailer. Gorded Tammy. I moved between him and the rig. My chest felt tight like the air had thickened. I could feel sweat on my back even though the air was cold. "She's not going anywhere with you." His smile dropped. His eyes narrowed like he was calculating. "Something. She lied," he said. "You don't know what she did." "I don't care." He took one slow step forward. My body refused to move. The crowbar in the footwell was 6 feet away. I could feel every inch between me and it. I knew I wasn't fast enough. "I already called the cops," I said. My voice was steady, but it was a lie. "They're on their way." That stopped him. His mouth twitched just slightly. Then he turned and walked into the trees. And this time I did call. State police took 30 minutes. Tammy was still curled in the trailer when they got there. She didn't speak. EMTs told me later she'd been gagged and knocked unconscious, rope burns on her ankles. Someone had teed her down. Randy never turned up. Not even a blip on a way station. No plate scans. Nothing. It's like the earth swallowed his rig whole. Tammy ended up with her sister in a little town outside Pikeville. I didn't ask questions. Never saw her again. Long-haul trucking through the Appalachians isn't glamorous, but it kept the lights on and gave me space, which, if I'm being honest, I needed more than I like to admit. I'd been doing the same run for years by then, back and forth between Dinsmore and Clary Fork, hauling whatever needed hauling. Pallets, shingles, lumber, sometimes crates that were sealed so tight you had to wonder if even the shipper knew what was inside. I stuck to familiar routes, US 52 mostly. I knew every dip in the asphalt, every diner where the pie wasn't frozen, and which gas station pumps wouldn't jam your car. There was comfort in the routine, in knowing what tomorrow looked like before. Today was over. Some folks hate monotony. I relied on it. So, when dispatch called me mid-shift and told me to take a shortcut, I should have known better. It was late September. I remember that part clearly because the leaves hadn't started turning yet, but the mornings had that sharp, dry chill. I was in the middle of a 3-day loop, hauling a load of empty pallets for a paper mill that barely needed them. It was the kind of run you took when your regular schedule got shuffled and you didn't want to sit idle. Easy money crews control most of the way, or it was supposed to be. "Hey, we've got a new route for you," the guy on the radio said. I didn't recognize his voice, but that wasn't weird. They shuffled dispatchers around sometimes. "Shortcut," he told me, "just cleared." Dots approved it. Supposed to save you a couple hours and help you dodge a backup. Near Haddock's Hollow. He gave me coordinates, even repeated them twice. I wrote them down on the notepad I keep duct taped to the dash. "Trust me," he said. Then clicked off. That phrase stuck with me. Not something dispatch usually says. The road started out looking more like a trail. It broke off from Mill Road, barely noticeable. Just a gap in the trees, wide enough to squeeze a rig through. No signs, no barrier, no truck route placard, just a stretch of gravel vanishing into dense forest. EPS didn't even recognize it. Still, the coordinates matched. I tried calling dispatch back, but got nothing, just static. I sat there for a minute, debating. My gut didn't like it, but time was money, and the voice had sounded sure, confident. So, I turned in. Right away. It felt wrong. The road was narrow, rutted with gravel, already giving way to packed dirt. The trees leaned in close, like they were sizing me up. Branches dragged across the mirrors. Leaves kept story catching on the windshield wipers, even though I hadn't turned them on. There was a tension in the air, not the kind you feel before a storm. More like the world holding its breath. And then it got quiet, not peaceful, not serene, just blank. I couldn't hear birds, no rustle of squirrels or insects, just the tires crunching and the low grumble of the engine. About 6 miles in, the road forked. No markers, no map, just a wide split with 2 equally sketchy options. I idled there, staring at both, hoping one would magically look more traveled. That's when the truck pulled up behind me. A rust red Ford looked like an ads model that hadn't seen a car wash since before I was born. The kind of vehicle you'd expect to see abandoned behind a barn, not cruising deep backwards. The driver leaned out the window. Hard-set face, leathery skin, eyes hidden under a worn-out Vietnam cap. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just pointed at the right fork. "LFD gets narrow," he said. "Right runs smooth," I nodded. "Thanks," no response. He just rolled past slow and steady and disappeared down the right, for I waited 10 seconds, a full minute. He never came back into view. I figured maybe he'd taken a side path or the road curved more than I could see, so I followed. That was the second mistake. Within minutes, the gravel vanished completely. I was rolling over packed earth now. Tires slipping a bit more, branches closer, air colder. My hands kept tightening around the wheel without me meaning to. Then I started seeing the trucks. 3 of them all within a mile stretch, same model as mine, same company decals too, but the numbers were wrong. Outdated, like older units we'd retired years ago. They were tilted into the ditch like they'd been parked there deliberately and left to sink. No damage, no rust, just abandoned, like they'd gotten tired and decided to rest. And none of them had plates. That's when the sign started. The first one was nailed to a pine tree just past a curve. White board, red letters, looked like house, paint, no more stops. 100 feet later, another one. This one strung across the road on a clothesline between 2 trees. "Not for you." I hit the brake shed. Everything around me suddenly looked different. The forest hadn't just grown denser, it had shifted. Pines I hadn't seen before now boxed me in. The rearview mirror showed nothing but trunks and undergrowth. No path, no open road. No sign of the red Ford. I turned off the engine. Needed to hear what was out there. See if maybe a breeze would start up. Anything. Silence. Then came the footsteps inside the trailer. Slow, deliberate, 1 step. Then another. I know what it sounds like when cargo shifts or when a strap snaps. This wasn't that. These were footfalls, heavy and measured. I grabbed the crowbar from under the passenger seat, climbed out, and circled. To the back, my heartbeat was thooting in my ears. The latch on the trailer was swinging loose like it had been unhooked just seconds ago. I opened the doors, empty except for 2 barefoot impressions in the aluminum floor, human-sized, deep, toes pointed right at me. I stepped back in the cab, locked the doors, jammed the keys in. Nothing. Dashboard lit up once, then went black. CB flickered. At first just static, then a voice garbled and slow like it was crawling out of a well. "Drop the hole," it repeated, over and over. "Drop the hole." I didn't wait. Slammed the stick into neutral and let the rig roll backward until I found enough room to crank it around. The mud sucked at the tires. Something thudded against the trailer once, then again, hard enough to make the cab shake. I didn't look. I just hit the gas and didn't stop until I saw pavement again. When I pulled into a gas station outside Burtonville, I could barely stand. My legs weren't cooperating. I walked inside, grabbed a gallon of water, and stood in the parking lot just holding it, trying to breathe like a normal person again. Back at the yard, I had the trailer inspected top to bottom. They found nothing. No damage, no footprints. Latch was secure, seals intact, but the crowbar I'd used gone. Not in the cab, not in the trailer, not in the yard. And when I called dispatch to ask who rerouted me, they were confused. Said no one had altered my route. No one made that call. The guy I spoke to, not even on shift that day. I haven't taken a shortcut since. I was starting just outside Ravenwood, Tennessee, heading east through the hills, then dipping into the backwoods of Mercer County, West Virginia. I'd done that run so many times over the years. I could have drawn it from memory. Twisty roads, patchy radio zones, stretches where you don't see another soul 4 hours, except the occasional deer, or maybe a possum playing dead in the middle of the lane. This particular job had a little bonus. The client was offering more than usual, fast delivery, tight schedule, no overnight stops unless something broke. Big load, too. Heavy as hell. It was for some private outfit I hadn't dealt with before, but that's not unusual in my line of work. The weird part was how they sent the paperwork, not email fax. And yeah, I know some companies are behind the times, but even in 2018, that stood out. Half the forms looked rushed, like someone had scribbled them in a hurry. A few lines weren't even typed, just jagged handwriting slashed across the page, almost like someone was filling in the blanks while the fax machine was already humming. Still, the signature was legit. The company had a registry number that checked out, and the down payment hit my account on time. That's really all I cared about. I don't ask questions when the money clears, but there was something odd on the last page in red ink just above the final line. Someone had written halfway Route 12 near Copper's Dip. That was it. No initials, no details, no due to construction or watch for flooding, nothing, just that sentence, floating there like it had been tacked on after everything else. I stared at it for a while, even Googled the name. Nothing useful came up. No road warnings, no accident reports. I had never heard of Copper's Dip before, and I'd run loads through nearly every hollow pass and logging trail in that stretch of the country. I figured maybe it was an old warning. Some of these remote routes have their reputations. Maybe a road that washed out in the 70s, or a spot with a tight curve where a driver once rolled a tanker. You hear stories. Most of the time those little notes are just overcautious reminders from a dispatcher trying to cover their butt. I forgot about it almost immediately until the second night. I was about 30 miles past Lemire, easing my way down a long ridge line after a full hour of no other vehicles in sight when I missed a turn. Nothing major, just one of those moments where the road markers hidden behind a tree or the curves too tight to double back. The GPS didn't blink, rerouted instantly. Still had a solid signal, which is rare in those mountains. It even said the detour would cut 10 minutes off the drive. I was behind schedule by then, so I didn't hesitate. That's when I saw the name Route 12. Didn't ring any bells. I double-checked the atlas I kept under the seat. No mention, not even listed as a state-maintained road, but the GPS showed it as local access. A short connector that met back up with the highway about 15 miles ahead. The Intransit didn't inspire confidence. Faded paint, narrow shoulders, ashvo, cracked and sunk in spots. It looked more like a service lane than a road built for rigs. Story 9, but I'd taken worse and GPS was adamant. I slowed down and took the turn. The change hit almost immediately. The forest pulled in on both sides like curtains closing. Dense dots so close I had to fold my mirrors in just to avoid clipping branches. No houses, no power lines, no fences or mailboxes. Just a tunnel of trees and that broken old road ahead of me twisting sharper and sharper every few minutes. That's when the CB lit up. I hadn't touched it since the last way station. Not a peep all day. Then out of nowhere, static, then a word, stop, just like that. Not a handle, not a warning. One word in a voice that didn't sound like it was coming through a speaker at all. No crackle, no distortion, just a man's voice. Low and dry, so clean it could have been someone whispering over my shoulder. And I froze. I didn't think. I just eased the rig over and hit the brake. My palms were slick on the wheel. Breath felt stuck in my throat. I didn't move, just sat there listening. At first, nothing. Then a tap on the trailer, just one. Then a second. Then a third, evenly spaced. Deliberate, not frantic, not random. The kind of knock that says someone knows exactly what they're doing. I popped the glove box and grabbed the tire iron. Stepped out slowly. Cold air hit me like a slap. Boots crunched over damp gravel as I circled the truck, head on a swivel. My ears felt like they were working overtime. Buffing. No person. No prints. No animals. No broken branches. No tracks in the mud. I got back in and noticed the window on the passenger side was open just a crack. Sitting right there on the seat was a child's glove. Red was soaked through. One of those old school kinds, with a little clip meant to attach it to a coat sleeve. It didn't look new, worn down at the cuff. I hadn't seen another living soul since turning onto this road, and I hadn't opened that door. I picked it up, looked it over once, and threw it out the window. Started the engine. The Gibbs blinked 3 times, then just died. Not just a signal drop. The whole screen went dark. No reboot. No restart. I kept driving. The road started to drop fast. Long, steep grades that made me ride the Jake hard, just to stay at a safe crawl. It didn't feel right. The curves were tightening. The trees started to lean in almost like they were moving, and then around a hairpin. Another truck, same make, same model, same color. It sat nose down in a ditch, with the front axle split, and the windshield spider-webbed from end to end. The company logo was there, but the lettering looked half burned off. I pulled alongside and stepped out. The driver door was hanging open. Inside, the cab was wrecked. Seats slashed apart. Deep gouges clawed across the dash, 4 of them, wide and deep, carved clean into the plastic. The smell was overwhelming. Not rot, not fuel. More like metal left on a burner too long. Sharp, wrong. The glove box was open. Inside, I saw a crumpled manifest. Same client, same route. I reached in and pulled it out. The photo ID clipped to the top. Not just someone who looked like me. It was me. Same jacket, same face, same tiny scar above my right eye. Even the handwriting on the signature line was mine. Not similar, identical. I backed out, shut the door, and didn't look back. I climbed into my own rig, started the engine, and floored it. Didn't care about speed. Didn't care about the trailer. I just needed off that road. The next hill damn near finished me. I crested it, and there was no road, no gravel, no asphalt, just a drop like the mountain ended, and nobody told the pavement. Nothing ahead but open air and a sea of black treetops. I slammed the brakes and cut hard left. The rig jackknifed behind me and slammed sideways into a wall of wet clay. I killed the engine and sat there shaking, gasping. Then from behind, me, 3 knocks right on the back window of the cab. Slow. I didn't look, just turned the key, threw it in reverse, and backed that whole rig down the mountain for 2 solid miles. Didn't stop until I hit a familiar stretch of blacktop. Gibbs blinked, back on like nothing had happened. I found a gas station with lights and pulled straight under the flood lamps. Got out and called dispatch. He picked up on the second ring, asked where I'd been. Route 12, I told him. Silence. Then that can't be right. That road's gone, washed out back in the 9 South. It's not there anymore. I didn't argue, just asked him to find me a motel and log myself off duty. Next morning, I dropped the trailer at a nearby terminal and went home. I never took another Appalachian contract again. I'm 34 years old. I run short-haul freight through the lower Alleghenies. My truck's an old 2007 Peterbilt with a stubborn clutch and rust crawling across the door like it's trying to consume the whole thing. But she runs growls like she's alive when I start her cold. I used to like that sound. Made me feel like I was never really alone in the cab. But something changed. That hum started feeling different. Like it was warning me instead of comforting me. Owns a double wide just outside Mitten Falls. I used to share it with my dad. After Mom passed, he just stopped trying. Quit his job. Quit shaving. Quit pretending like he was part of the world. Most nights he sat on the porch, his stained coveralls, with a bottle in his lap, staring out into the woods, not drinking like a man escaping, more like he was waiting for something to step out from between the trees, something he already knew. The trailer always felt off. Not haunted, no cold spots, no whispers, but like it was holding its breath. I kept out of it whenever I could, took extra shifts, lingered at truck stops, even volunteered for routes that other guys bailed on just to avoid coming back too early. My other job at Danby's also paid peanuts, but it gave me reasons to stay greasy and busy, which was better than feeling the walls watching. One night in early June 2022, my dispatcher, a guy named Lenny, called me at 8:40. One of our regulars backed out of a timber run past Coulter Ridge. It was last minute and dirty, the kind of favor nobody wanted to owe, but I said yes before he finished the ask. I knew the route, had run it maybe twice before. It's not exactly a road. It's more like a series of stubborn dirt veins carved into the hills. No guardrails, switchbacks sharp enough to snap axles, and fog so thick it turns headlights into blinders. I left before dawn, coffee still scalding in the cup holder, and pushed past a few logging crews already setting up their rigs. About 3 hours in, I hit a stretch near Hangman's Bend, where the road clings to the slope like a regret. That's when the CB erupted, garbled voices, someone yelling. At first, I couldn't make out much, but then load snapped downhill. Guys under it. By the time I reached the site, the scene didn't make sense. I saw the overturned loader, timber spilled across the gravel like scattered matchsticks, and a guy laid out with his body all wrong. Not like he was injured, like he'd been folded, bent in ways the human body doesn't go. Blood had soaked into the bark, pulled into the ruts. 2 men were crouched beside him, holding whatever was left together while he screamed. I froze for half a second, then ran in and did what I could. We slid aboard under him, but I turned away when someone touched his leg. The way it moved, like it wasn't attached anymore, made my stomach lurch. My brain must have shut down my sense of smell because I remembered the motion, the hands, the heat, but nothing else. They laid him beside a trailer wrapped in torn blankets and someone's jacket. The helicopter showed up long before the ambulance could have made it down those roads. While the medics worked, one of the crew, older guy, name might have story 10 been Joel or Joe, pulled me aside. He looked pale, jittery, like he just had a brush with something too big to name. Said it wasn't equipment failure, he said, keeping his voice low. Loader spooked. Some cabovers tore down from ridge tin. Full speed, no lights. Just came out of nowhere. Driver never stopped. I asked him what it looked like. He squinted like he wasn't sure if he should say it. Then powder blue Freightliner looked old. That hit me like a punch to the gut. There's only one powder blue Freightliner like that in the whole damn region. My dad's. I knew it because I helped rebuild the frame and replace the rear differential with my own hands back when I was 19. I'd patched that exact paint layer by layer. I don't remember falling, but somehow I ended up sitting in a patch of brush, gripping my hat like it was a flotation device. Someone found me there and walked me back to my truck. I told them I was just laded. That was a lie. My dispatcher showed up in person later that day, said to take the week. I didn't argue, didn't say much, at all. Driving home felt like floating through molasses. I barely remember the turns, just remember pulling into the gravel patch out front and noticing the garage light was on. That old fluorescent buzzed behind the cracked side window. I walked around and saw my dad inside, pacing like a man rehearsing. Ali, rubbing his jaw the way he always did when he thought no one was watching. Same boots, same oil-smeared jeans. I didn't knock, just opened the door and said, "You were at Coulter Ridge today." No lights barreling down the grade. You spooked the loader, and the guy lost his damn leg. He stood still, didn't blink, didn't look surprised. Just stared at me like he'd already had the conversation in his head. "You didn't stop," I said. "You ran." I don't remember hitting him the first time. Just remember motion, rage, dust, and fists and years of things we never said piling into my knuckles. He let me go at first. Then he hit back, one solid punch to the side of my head, and the world tilted. "You don't touch me," he said, calm, cold. "I don't care about some dumb kid." He was standing in the wrong place. Not my fault. Then he turned and walked out. No keys, no wallet, no bag, just gone into the trees like they'd called him home. I never saw him again. The guy survived, lost a leg above the knee. I heard about a quiet settlement, paperwork buried somewhere, no court, no cops. Folks around here know when to stop asking questions. I quit trucking a month later. Couldn't fill up without feeling like something was behind me in the mirror. I started therapy with a woman named Ruth in Dowry. 3 times a week, she asked about dreams. I told her, it's not nightmares. It's one dream dressed up in different skin. Same road, same ending, just new costumes every time. By mid-July, I thought I was getting better. One night, I took the quad out to an old stream bed I used to fish when I was a kid. It's tucked behind what's left of the mill road. The culvert's collapsed and the water barely trickles anymore. It's quiet there, feels outside of time. I parked, walked down the bank, stood in the shallow water, thinking about nothing. Then I felt something soft brush against my boot. I looked down. At first I thought it was an old coat, maybe trash someone tossed. Then I saw the face, pale, bloated, a woman, hair floating out like river grass just beneath the surface. I screamed loud enough to tear something inside my throat. I don't even remember turning, just remember clawing up the embankment, slipping on wet stone, bleeding by the time I reached the quad, gunned it until I found a bar of signal and called 911, 7 cop cars, K9 unit, a woman, 71, missing from Low Ridge Senior Home. They figured she'd been in the water 4 or 5 hours, not enough time to even bloat that much. Papers said local resident discovers body. I kept my name out of it. That was the second time in 6 weeks I helped pull a body out of these woods.